So yes, this is an accessory bypass tract. When you're a fetus, you're under construction. Your roadways are under construction. I live in the far side, so I like to use analogies that remind me of things from the far side. So I think about being under construction. The roadways, my pathways, they're all under construction. But we know we've still got to get electricity from the top of the heart to the bottom of the heart so that we can have fetal heart tones, correct? But we can't use the interstate. All we can use is what we have available. And what we have available is Business 87 across Texas. So any of you who travel outside the city, you know that Main Street is Business 87 just about in every community, whether you're going Hill Country, whether you're going Austin, whatever it is. And so while this is under construction, and they're putting a toll booth up here, because you have to, you're going to have to pay a toll to be able to access all those roadways eventually. I do a lot on the North Corridor, so I'm up and down 35 a lot and was very grateful when the toll road came in at 85 miles an hour. Because I could get off 35 and go a toll road. But it costs money. So, there's my point of inception, conception. There's my essay node. I'm starting to develop this. I have to get electricity from top to bottom using that accessory Business 87 pathway. So I'm bypassing the gatekeeper at the AV node. So I'm bypassing him. Now, when I'm born, I am supposed to close down this pathway, and electricity should now all have to pass through the toll road. And so when you have to pause to pay the toll, that creates that bit of delay between the atria and the ventricles down here. Creates that delay. That delay is what we know as that PR segment. Okay, so you're paying your toll. So that is supposed to give us a distinct P wave as we go from the right atrium to the left atrium. Our little bit of a line ready to pay the toll. Then I've paid the toll and I can get onto the big roads. A person who does not self-ablate, so a person who keeps both options open, think of them as being quite impatient. If things aren't going fast enough for them, or if they want to avoid the toll, they will jump on to this accessory bypass tract because it's still intact. So that means I'm going to be shooting electricity very quickly with no delay or very little delay to get my electricity from top to bottom. So that creates what's known as a delta wave. It just stands for D as in A for alpha, B for Bravo, C for Charlie, D for delta. It's because it makes it look like the shape of a D, the letter of the alphabet. So the three hallmark characteristics on an ECG of WPW. First and foremost, we're going to have a wide QRS. You're going to have a PR interval less than 0.12. So you should, if you didn't before, should now understand why you're going to have a very short PR interval, because they're bypassing the node. So essentially we're sending electricity directly through both atria and right down to the ventricles. So it's going to cause a very short PR interval. And then third, the presence of delta waves. And your delta waves are actually best seen in your anterior leads. So best seen when you see a 12 lead. Not necessarily from this electrode down here. So those are the characteristics, and that's why it happens. So these people are at risk for AV reentrant tachycardias. So AV reentrant tachycardias. As opposed to the people who are at risk for AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. So in your book, you had AVRT and AVNRT. So if you just think of what's there and what's missing. So this is an example of AV reentrant tachycardia. They bypass the node. PSVT is an example of AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. What's the most common trigger of PSVT? The most common trigger of PSVT. PAC. A PAC is the most common thing. So think of the PAC as being that hiccup. And it can take somebody from a nice 80 to 180. And that's where that electricity gets caught up in a loop. And then it'll spit out through the toll road. So it's an AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. As opposed to this accessory bypass, which is an AV reentrant tachycardia. Understand the difference? One uses the node, one doesn't. And you recognize for practicality that the terms SVT and PSVT are not interchangeable. So they're not interchangeable. You need to know the difference between the two. So everybody's okay with that? No? Sure. You folks on this side of the room, you have 16-year-old kids getting ready to buy them their first car. You have 16-year-old kids getting ready to buy them their first car. You're great parents. You buy your kid's car with an automatic transmission. And when they're out of your sight, bye, Dad. When they're out of your sight, foot goes to the gas pedal, all you see is their dust. Right? No hesitation. That's SVT. You cheapskates bought them a vehicle with a manual transmission. Yeah. And so what you're going to find with your kids is their desire is to go as fast as these guys without any interruption. But until they get the ABC of the accelerator, brake, clutch thing down, there's going to be a lot of abrupt starts and stops. You're SVT and you're PSVT. So there's the difference.
What's the P stand for?
Paroxysmal, which means abrupt starts and stops. So if you can imagine when you first learn to drive with a clutch, especially when you're stopped and uphill and you're trying to, yeah, and you get a lot of those stutters and you stalls and you know, then you have to start again and a lot of lurching.
So we see SVT and then back to like the sinus tack and then
Absolutely. Or to sinus rhythm. Yeah. Yeah. They might have AFib and then go into an episode of PSVT. Okay, so you can move in and out of that rhythm. But it's usually triggered by a PAC. So electricity is supposed to come from both atria down a central pathway to the toll booth. This one gets kind of born early. He jumps in ahead of line and he gets caught up in a loop. I usually say it reminds me when I'm traveling, and I travel a lot. I spend about 15 nights a month on the road traveling, staying in hotels, teaching. And I'll get to these towns like Blanco, Johnson City, Brownwood, you know, all of these places that have the rock courthouse and the circle, New Braunfels even. And I'll get into those, into that circle, into that loop, and I'll go, God, what town am I in? Which of the little spokes am I supposed to get out of? And I'll just drive around and around until I figure it out. And then I spit out the correct one. So that's an AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. Any questions about WPW?
So, well, I mean, on the PSVT, SVT, so on a monitor, how would we be able to see the difference
You will see the difference by if, on your screen, what you see is what you get, and it's all greater than 150 narrow QRS complex, presumptively that is SVT. If you see big old abrupt changes, 80 to 160, down to 70, up to 160, down to 88, up to 180. So it's going to be these nice, it's like they glued two pieces of strip together, normal and really fast and narrow. And you see it going across your screen. So if all you see going across your screen is no interruptions, it's SVT. If you see these, now I'm in normal sinus, now I'm in SVT. Now I'm in normal sinus, SVT. Sinus tach, normal sinus, SVT. That would be PSVT. Any question about any other rhythms?